Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Super Deluxe Gamescast. It is Thursday. What is it? January 25th. Yep, I got it. It only took me...
There's a clock and a calendar on your computer in the bottom right corner, bud.
Derek, there's a lot of things happening on my desktop. I can only do so much at once. Okay. This is an episode that I have been looking forward to / dreading for some time.
Dreading?
Hold on, wait.
I'm waiting.
Hold on. Dreading because of the topic. The topic is a postmortem on 2023, which 2023 was a really weird fucking year for games. But I've been looking forward to it because our former cast member and award-winning journalist, Reb Valentine, is back on the podcast. Now, I want to specify, she has not just won one award, she's won 2 awards.
All of the awards.
First, she won the Game Hers Award for Gaming Journalist of the Year in November 2020. And then she won the Knickerbocker Award for Best Game Journalism from the New York Video Game Critics Circle in February of 2022.
John knows about awards you don't even know about.
Are you reading my LinkedIn right now?
No, I'm
doing?
I'm literally listing. There's a list of awards you got.
Look at the reflection in the heart glasses.
This is on my LinkedIn.
No, I'm reading it off IGN.
Oh, I did put it on IGN. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. I did.
I love seeing the reflection of what John's looking at through the heart glasses.
Yeah, see, it's on IGN right there. You can see it in the reflection of my heart glasses.
Yeah, that's true. I did write a bio.
Can we like retroactively use Reb's personal awards to like help?
No,
that
that's
guy
just John because he's hype beast.
One guy who got mad when we claimed we were an award-winning podcast back when Reb was still on it.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Oh,
He's like, "What awards? I want to see these awards."
Yeah, we were like, yeah, I remember that. We were like, we're an award-winning podcast, and he's like, bull fucking shit. Show me the awards, loser. You've won no.
Show me the
awards.
receipts.
I mean,
Yeah,
I'll
it's like-
give you an award if you need one.
Hell yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's like, my dude.
You know they're all made up, right?
Yeah.
Like you can just invent awards. And
They
give
don't
them to
give you
people.
money.
We literally did that. Finn and Caitlin made some socks.
Finn gives
I still have one.
Finn
It's
gives
upstairs
people
hanging on the
socks,
wall.
and they put the sock award on their Steam page. So
Yeah.
We basically were committing.
And then they make AAA multi-$100 million games.
We were
And it won a
basically
sock award.
we were committing podcasting stolen valor with that one. So we apologize to everyone. Reb, it's been way too long since you've been here. Hello.
Hello, I'm here. I'm hanging. I told John that I will come on this podcast more often if he invites me with more notice than literally the night before.
Okay, look.
That's why I haven't been on. That's the only reason is because sometimes
Hey,
I get
Reb,
a
it's
sometimes I get a
Thursday.
text.
You want to come on?
I get a text from John at like 3 p.m. on a Thursday. The podcast goes live at 6 p.m. He's like, hey, can you be on? And I'm like, oh my God, no.
to be fair, every time like we have a podcast, but only like 2 or 3 of us can make it that night, John definitely has the duty of like round up a buddy last minute because everyone else has the big
not
sad.
the
We
last
don't
minute,
usually
buddy.
give him much notice. It's like an hour before the show. Yeah, I won't be on.
Yeah, it's like,
Everyone brought it. It was upstairs. He brought
oh,
it.
there. Look.
Oh,
Yeah.
Lovely.
Yay!
Got it hanging.
Is it a watermelon sock?
Yeah. I fixed
Lovely.
it. Finn had a bunch left over from one of the PAXs when he was giving them out, and I had asked him if I could have one.
It would have to have
and
been West
he had one for
2019,
me.
I guess, right? Because that's the one we were all
But
together at.
also because
Right?
she earned it.
Yeah.
Did I? Did I make
Yeah.
a game?
Yeah.
You sure
Did I
did.
look like Hunter S. Thompson in those heart glasses?
Slightly.
Did I? Hold on.
What?
Somebody in chat said with these heart glasses on.
Yeah.
I look like
Noted
Hunter S.
clip
Thompson.
master Dorian said that you look a little Hunter S. Thompson-esque.
Interesting.
A lot of Hunter S. Thompson photos going around with him wearing heart-shaped glasses.
I mean, I
wouldn't,
personally don't.
I
see
wouldn't
it.
question it.
I don't see it. All right, you fucking nerds. We've got some shit to talk about tonight. Are we going to talk about what we've been playing, or are we just
Yeah,
gonna hop
absolutely.
straight?
We
Yeah?
have I Need Some Good Vibes, right?
Mhm.
Also, we have at least one game that's been played for review recently that needs to be talked about a little bit.
Mm.
John, in fact, let's start with you briefly, because I don't know everything you've been playing, but I do know 1/3
I've been playing.
things you've been playing.
Yeah. So Capcom very graciously gave us a code for Ace Attorney Apollo Justice Trilogy, and I played through all 3 of those. Now, I had not played the original Apollo Justice game. I had played Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice. Dual Destinies, of course, being one of my favorite Ace Attorney games. And Finn, you'll want to keep your ears open on this one. It's a great trilogy of games. The remasters are done very well. Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice especially lend themselves well to a nice HD upscaling from 3DS. A little less so with Apollo Justice, simply because that was a DS game, and it is, the art style is much more similar to the first 3 Ace Attorney games, being that it's hand drawn and there's not a lot of motion, and I don't feel like that art style and I felt the same way about Ace Attorney 1, 2, and 3 being brought over to the Switch. I don't feel like that art style lends itself well to an HD remaster. I still enjoyed it for what it was, but it definitely, and like especially leaving like Apollo Justice behind and then moving straight to Dual Destinies, which looks a lot better and it plays a lot better. It was a little bit jarring for me. I don't know that I would go back to Apollo Justice, but Dual Destinies is one of those Ace Attorney games that I can just revisit over. I've played it multiple times. So it's a great compilation of games. Obviously, if you have not played the first 3 Ace Attorney games, I do not recommend starting with the Apollo Justice trilogy, because you're going to be fucking lost in the sauce. Those games are set 6 years after Trials and Tribulations ends, and there's a lot you're not going to fucking understand. So definitely start with the first 3 Ace Attorney games. But thank you so much, Capcom, for providing us a review code for that. I greatly appreciate it.
I'm
Capcom
so happy
creators-
we live in a world where there's like 3 really good Ace Attorney compilations available for like most people to play.
Yeah,
and
they're
it's
super accessible now.
does pretty well, right? Like visual novels have a hard time breaking through the noise a lot of times, and Ace Attorney seems immune to that. Like it just does pretty good, and I couldn't be happier for that.
It's also like, guys, it's Capcom. I love you. It's time for Ace Attorney 7. Like, come on.
Yes.
Like, and I have to believe that that's happening now that they've remastered the first 6 games and they've brought over the Great Ace Attorney trilogy, which, or not the trilogy, but the 2 Great Ace Attorney games, which are, by the way, the best Ace Attorney games. But I have to believe it's time for 7 now. Like, it has to be.
Shu Takumi's got to be working on something.
Unless they're going to remaster Investigations, which they shouldn't.
Yes, they should.
No,
I mean,
no.
Yeah, bring in
I played the fan translation patch of the first
They
one. I
have
liked
done. They've done a delightful job of keeping this series of games accessible for people to play. So, not to toot my own horn, but I was on NPR's 1A this week with Frank Cifaldi and James Mastromarino talking about game preservation and why it matters. And
I love that topic.
a big topic in that discussion was the fact that because of current laws and because of technology and just because of the way the industry is right now, we're so much at the mercy of giant corporations to keep games accessible for long periods of time, because technology is constantly degrading. We're constantly getting rid of old consoles and taking on new ones, and people, don't necessarily have the ability to access these older games. So the fact that Ace Attorney is by and large a pretty available series for people, especially compared with other series, especially again because of what Derek said, the fact that it's visual novel and people have weird vibes about visual novels, but for some reason like Ace Attorney gets like an exception. I don't know.
Sure.
I mean,
I
it is
don't
really
get it.
good, but
Well
yeah,
deserved.
I mean, there are
Yeah.
still, like Chrono Trigger, Square. Where's Chrono Trigger? If you want to talk about games preservation,
He did say he was going to do
PC,
this.
It's around. They like Chrono Trigger is very playable today. It's on PC.
but where's Parasite Eve?
Or is it on PC?
These goalposts.
Wait, did I make this
Chrono
up?
Trigger's on
No,
PC.
it's on. It's on.
Chrono Trigger's on Steam, and it's an excellent port now. It's
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it started off as a garbage port. They had to do a lot of fixes for that one.
But
But if I start going down this rabbit hole, I'm going to talk about Chrono Trigger the rest of the podcast, and nobody except Reb wants that. So I'm gonna pass. Oh, of course, obviously, I have been playing Final Fantasy 14 as I am wont to do. So yes, Reb, thank you, Reb. Fucking fantastic. Reb, look at this shit. Hold on.
Oh my god, John.
Ah, fucker.
He just threw his webcam.
Doesn't Finn have to leave early? I want to hear what Finn's doing.
I do. Finn's got to
Oh,
come
good.
next. I do want to hear what he's been playing.
It is all
Sorry about
good.
that. Reb,
I'm
look,
just-
it's Chrono.
Wow, he's
he's
red
wooden.
like everything else in your room.
He's wood. Look, I can't help that. Anyway, who's next?
Finn,
Finn.
buddy, what you been
No,
playing?
I want to hear what Reb's been playing. I'll go after Reb.
Finn's been playing.
Fine.
Kick your ass.
Okay. So I have been playing a couple things concurrently. finishing up my co-op game of Baldur's Gate 3 with Saki.
Oh yeah. How far are you guys?
How many hours are you in now?
I have beaten the game with my group of friends from home already, and Caitlin and I's game we're almost there. We're about a handful of quests away in Act 3 of being done our game. Total, I think I'm like 500-ish hours into it.
Hell yeah.
All right, you're about where I'm at.
And then I just beat Like a Dragon Gaiden, the man who erased his name, to prepare myself for Yakuza 8 or Like a Dragon 8 Infinite Wealth.
That's out like today, isn't it?
It came out today.
Oh, hell yeah.
And I'm also chugging through both Dave the Diver and Prince of Persia Lost Crown.
How do you like Dave the Diver? I am not as high on it as other people. I'm curious what you think.
I got pretty addicted to it
because it's the roguelike elements were very downplayed compared to others in the genre, and that made me like it better because that's usually not my genre. Because it like there's actually a sense of progression, and I was like getting through the story missions. I didn't care enough to like max everything out and do everything in the game. I just wanted to get the story done, and I just entered what I have been told is the final chapter.
Okay.
So,
Ben, are you referring to Indie Game of the Year, Dave the Diver?
I am referring to a game that came out last year, type of production.
Noted AAA production.
Noted indie game, Dave the Diver.
Noted indie game, Baldur's Gate 3, and noted indie game, Dave the Diver.
What's that? It's a pixel game? Well, it's clearly indie.
And besides that, no, that's pretty much it. That's 4 different games I'm playing.
That's a lot of games.
That's a lot of games.
I love that you're doing a co-op Baldur's Gate 3 run. Imran and I were doing that too. We stopped in the middle of Act 2 because the game was really buggy and we kept having like crashes that were causing us to lose progress.
Wait till you get to Act 3.
I hear it is better.
Oh, it's much better now.
It's better now.
We intend to go. We need to go back to it. We haven't had any time.
Yeah, no, I love it, and so now, since I got Like a Dragon 8 is gonna be pretty much my focus for the rest of the month.
Same.
And I hope to get it done in time for 7 Rebirth. That's the plan.
Hell yes, the winter of RPGs, the
That's
winter
right.
of our there's something there.
Opposite of discontent. I don't know.
Yeah, there's something in there. Yeah.
Noted wordsmith Rebecca Valentine, everybody.
Speaking of noted wordsmith Rebecca Valentine, Reb, what have you been playing?
Oh, I'm so stoked. I told Derek I had 2 conditions for this podcast. I told him I did not want to talk about a certain game that involves little monsters and guns.
No.
And I told him that I did want to talk about Void Stranger, which is the game that I played on my honeymoon pretty much like obsessively, and I'm still like picking up and whittling away at. Have any of you heard of Void Stranger? Do you know what that is?
I have not.
Yes.
I have.
It's like a puzzle game, right?
Yeah, so it is a Sokoban style puzzle game, which means it's a block pushing game. Like if you ever played a game where you did like little block pushing puzzles, that's Sokoban. And so the general gist of it is you are a little person. You're this character named Gray, who jumps into like this 255 floor deep labyrinth. And on every floor, there is a little Sokoban puzzle, and you solve it, and then you go down the stairs and you move on. And that's the basic thing that you are doing over and over. But as you go down, you start there's sometimes floors where you get like little pieces of Gray's story and this background where she was like the lady in waiting to this princess, but she also has kind of this dark past, and the princess is going to get married to this guy, but Gray's like not sure about what's going on. And so it's sort of interspersing these scenes of kind of very fluffy anime visual novel with this kind of grim labyrinth where you're occasionally seeing like these decaying corpses and these like
I'm looking at it right now, Reb, but like visually I dig this.
Yeah, it's very like an homage to the like Game Boy Color era of visuals. You're doing this, but so this is fun. Like I enjoy the block pushing, but I am enamored with Void Stranger because it is one of those games where there's some other shit going on. There's like an ARG-like quality to this where there are all kinds of weird hidden secrets and things you can do. And as you play through it, and once you beat it for the first time, you gather some information about how the game can be played and how you can do things a little bit differently. And you are then compelled to play it to play the same puzzle rooms through again, but with a little more information about how it all works, and then you finish it differently and you maybe get another ending, and then that unlocks something new, and then you learn how this one element works, and then you learn that actually there's secret exits and hidden floors and nonogram puzzles, so like Picross puzzles hidden all over the place.
Some of the imagery here is really
and-
dark and twisted.
Yeah, there's a bunch of real fucked up shit in there as you go deeper, and it turns out it's like tied to a game that the developers of that previously made that I've never played, something Ranger, I think. I don't even know what it is. But anyway, they're all like, it's really deep, and there's just a bunch of stuff going on, and I'm at the point where I have solved every every Sokoban puzzle it's given me, but there's still a bunch of stuff hidden in the game, and so I'm just trying to figure out how to jump between floors and sneak around and like figure out what all the weird hidden secrets are. There's like ways to get new items, because it's like the main item you get is this rod that lets you pick up a platform in front of you, and then once you have one, you can put it back down, so you can kind of rearrange the floor tiles. But there's apparently other items you can get that do other things, and you can find them and do all this stuff. And there's like secret. There's no boss battles like on its surface. It's a Sokoban game, so you're just pushing blocks around. But then you find out there's actually secret boss battles. So yeah, I'm really into Void Stranger right now, and the music is a jam.
I'm gonna have to check this out because I love when a game is like deceptively simple at concept, but then it like a puzzle box opens itself up to reveal like all these additional things that you didn't even know were there the first time through. I love that sort of stuff.
I love games like that.
Games that play with your expectation of what a game is
are always good.
I'm looking at this, and Reb, you know that I love like a good retro aesthetic. This looks fantastic.
It's really nice on the Steam Deck too. I stole Imran's old Steam Deck when he got the new one, so I've been playing it on Steam Deck. I wish they'd release it for Switch, but it's a good handheld. Like you just sit there and kind of puddle around with puzzles. It's really nice.
Reb, by the way, you should know that my next playthrough is I'm going to play Undertale for the first time.
Oh,
I thought you've
never Undertaled.
No.
Huh.
I started it. And I never finished it.
That's what I'm remembering. Well, finish that game.
You gotta commit. We'll talk about Undertale later. But don't.
I know that. I know that's random, but like the whole retro aesthetic kind of brought that to my mind. But this looks great. Who's the developer on this, Reb?
Oh, I don't remember. Some real cool people.
Yeah,
this looks really cool. This looks really
Some
really
little
cool.
bitty team. They did like a shmup or something before, right?
Zone something. What was it they did? I don't remember what it's a game I'd never heard. Zero Ranger. Thank you, Mr. Delaby. Yes. Zero Ranger is their other game, which I had heard of vaguely when I heard it mentioned. I was like, oh, I know that's a game that exists, but I think it was not a game for me.
Yeah.
Reb, you got anything else?
That's the main thing I think right now. I like Finn. I'm very stoked for Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth. Imran actually had an early copy, and he played it through all the way. He wrote a review on his Patreon that's really, really good that people should go read. So I've seen 30-second snippets of Infinite Wealth here and there, but I fortunately not had it spoiled for me, but I know enough to know that I'm just gonna be super duper into this game. I know that it's a game about Ichiban being a very good boy, and that is so important to my heart because he's such a good boy.
Every new Yakuza game, I am so surprised.
Actually, it's Like a Dragon.
Okay, cool. Every new one of these, I constantly find myself surprised by how earnest and heartfelt and for games that are ostensibly about gangsters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And crime, the protagonists of these games are often very, very good people and good men. And I think that Yakuza 7, that blew up, over here in particular being so very sympathetic to and showing the plight of homeless people and sympathetic to sex workers and being very anti the kinds of movements that seek to push people to the sidelines is very oddly progressive for art in general. Art is,
they're very pro-social.
Yes. In a way that I just constantly find myself a little surprised by, and I shouldn't be at this point, as many of them as I've played, But yeah, I'm very looking forward to Infinite Wealth because I'm sure it's going to be wonderful.
I am very compelled over the course of the series by the fact that, like, if you play some of the older games, there are moments in those older games where you're like, oh, they did not nail this portrayal of this. There's like specifically a portrayal of like a woman who is queer in one of the early games. She's like very explicitly a lesbian. And then at the end, they're like, oh, but actually he can kind of keep her from, she just really needed a real man in her life. And it's kind of gross, frankly. Yeah. But I have become appreciative over the course of this series of the fact that these developers seem willing to, you can't really make statements and go back and edit games retroactively, right? But you can do better in the future. And they really seem to, like, every single game, I feel like they learn a little bit more about like their own biases, and they keep making like games that are better and better at confronting them. And I haven't read this article yet, but I saw a really good headline from one of the outlets that reviewed this article, or that reviewed this game, that was talking about how Infinite Wealth is very good at having a conversation about, hey, all of the main characters in this game largely are criminals. Like, they have done kind of like socially reprehensible things. Like, some of them have done murder, some of them have done like really bad violence, a lot of them have extorted people, like genuinely things that in real life you'd be like, hey, what the fuck, that's horrible. In a game you're a little more forgiving because they're protagonists of a video game, but they're genuinely really bad things. But these are games that allow you to sort of have a conversation about, okay, these are people who want to rehabilitate, they want to find their place in society, they just want to make an honest living and live their lives. Do we let them do that? Like, what does it's nice to wax poetic about forgiveness, but what does that like really mean in a societal context? And are we giving them the tools and resources to do that? And should we? I mean, yes, but should we? And like, how does that happen? And I'm really interested to see how that plays out in Infinite Wealth. And it sounds like it does a pretty good job. So I'm freaking stoked.
Could not be more excited.
Before we move on to you, Derek, Reb mentioned really, really good boys. And I do want to mention, since one of our big guests kind of let the cat out of the bag on Twitter, real quick, I do want to say that we are going to have an SDGC podcast panel at PAX East with Ben Starr is going to be one of our guests. Obviously, he's the voice of Clive Rossfield in Final Fantasy 16. Finn is going to be on the panel. Finn's
going to be a judge on the panel. Britt will be a judge on the panel. I will be our MC.
Eric is running the panel. I'm not on the panel at all. I want nothing to do with this.
But it's the best boys of Final Fantasy. And as a note to people in chat, I'm going to post a link to the survey. If you've not done the survey yet, please do so. Help us narrow down. We're going to do 2 rounds of voting to help find out who the actual best boys are, because there's a lot of really good boys. And
after Ben spoke up and said, "Hey, I'm on this panel," Derek, how many votes did you get?
Hundreds of responses poured in over the next 24 hours. It's been brutal. And 2 of the questions are write-ins because I don't know the MMOs, right? So like, I'm just gonna have to read through a lot of text answers to tally up. Some names.
Did Ben actually like tweet out the
he did confirm
spreadsheet you had?
No. But he
replied.
He replied to John.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah. But yes.
No, So Derek, who else is on the podcast, or who else is on the panel? Cam is on the panel.
Good buddy Cam Hawkins is going to be on there. Jared Green is going to be on there. A journalist and buddy of many of ours. And then Darren Simmons over at Rusty Rupees is going to be on. So good panel, good mix of types of folks. A lot of RPG nerds here to talk about some good boys.
I want to give 2 shout outs in chat real quick. One to Huggable Hipster Gaming, who is Ariel. She says, "This podcast is my comfy place." We greatly appreciate that. That makes me feel really good. And of course, Grant Stoner is doing really good journalism in the chat as well.
Dude, Grant is fucking amazing.
Grant is amazing.
I get to work with him now. We get to do story. I get to like edit his stories. He's really
awesome.
Good. Everybody go read Grant Stoner's articles.
I wish I could be. I honestly, like, Grant has the kind of personality that I strive for, and will probably never have. Yeah. So, no, Grant, I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep going. Derek, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So I'm trying not to play anything that is going to be like a big time sink, or that I need to get too involved in, because of course we've got a bunch of stuff coming up that I'm interested in. I'm really interested in Yakuza 8. I'm really interested in Persona 3 Reload. I'm really interested in Grand Blue Fantasy Relink after that demo. And, not far off from now, we have Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So it's RPG hell here in the beginning of the year.
Don't forget Visions of Mana.
That's like
That's
summer.
in the
That's a
summer.
ways
Yeah,
further
whatever
out.
it counts.
Dude,
We
I'm
got
stoked for
time.
Visions of Mana. Okay,
Yeah.
continue.
Oh,
But
we're gonna talk about
but anyway, so what I've been playing two things mostly over the last week. I started a replay of Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. That's the second
hell
one.
yeah!
And it's
it's
so
always good to kill Nazis.
cathartic. I haven't played it since launch because I replayed The New Order not like maybe a year ago, and it was like, yeah, let me throw in The New Colossus. And like, I get that The New Order is maybe a little bit better to play. I get it. Here's the thing. The New Colossus is a perfect video game because it takes it is for like in that it is a very like intelligently anti-fascist game. Like it's very intentional about like the fact that you're like it displays not just, you know, Jewish people and like people of color as enemies of the Nazis, but like disabled folks, neurodivergent folks, queer folks, right?
Oh, I love the fact that it just takes a big fat diarrhea dump all over Hitler.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, right. The I was saying on Twitter a couple days ago, but like the part where you get to finally meet Hitler and he's just like a little old man with dementia who's like is so cathartic, and then he shoots Ronald Reagan. It's so good. But like even stuff like where Sigrun, the main villain's daughter who defects like right at the beginning of the game, is effectively like the way fascism works is it creates a hierarchy that must ever shrink. Right? As soon as you get rid of all of the undesirables, you do have to create a new outclass of undesirables. So you can start with just, we have to get rid of all of the Jews, right? But, or we have to get rid of all of the Roma people, all disabled people. But eventually it does shrink to, we have to get rid of neurodivergent and queer people. And eventually your upper hierarchy is so small that you have to look at things like you are overweight and that is moral degeneracy in and of itself. To put those people, yes, exactly, to create a new outclass for people to focus on. Fascism is self-destructive and will always eat itself, but that's the method through which it works, and I think it's very smart to show that through Sigrun early on. It's just a wonderful game, and it's very cathartic.
Derek, can we give a shout out to Super Spash?
Yeah, I love Super Spash. Even
Super
if I have
Spash
some
is
bad
the
experiences with
best.
neurodivergent folks who are a little obsessed with aliens. But like I do love Super Spash. So yeah, I've been having a great time with Wolfenstein. The other thing
I want to play Wolfenstein.
Yeah, the other thing.
Can
Yes.
I throw in there, Derek, that I loved when I don't remember all the names of the Wolfensteins. I'm not a Wolfenstein. I'm not a big shooty gun person, but I love the spirit of those games. I loved when the most recent one came out and they did the cycle of interviews, and this was like at this period of time where, you know, we were for some reason being forced to have a discourse over whether or not it was good to punch Nazis, which of course it always is. But people were like asking the Wolfenstein devs, "Hey, do you think it's really okay to shoot Nazis?" And they were just like staring at these interviewers, confused, like, "Yes,
Yeah,
I love
good?
the line
What
from
are
the
you
interview
talking
of
about?"
there's a lot of great things you can do with a hatchet and a Nazi. Like,
I am a big fan of. I like to say that any Nazi within 20 feet of me isn't safe.
and they know it because there's bits in the game where they poke at like modern, like far right, like the bullshit of like you can overhear two Nazi soldiers being like, "I can't believe they want to kill us just because we hold different opinions from them." Can you imagine how this would be if we went around killing anybody who had a different opinion from us? Which like that's exactly what they're doing.
Yes.
But hypocrisy is not a thing that matters to fascists. So like you can't catch them on hypocrisy. This is great.
I just appreciate it in a time when like everybody, you know, I mean, forgive me for being crummy here, but like, you know, certain AAA publishers, when you try to have any kind of question that invokes any sort of like moral, the existence of any kind of morals of any kind, when you ask them questions about, hey, did you like have any kinds of vaguely political things in this game.
What's a politic?
They freak out and they get scared and they run away. The fact that Machine Games was willing to just unequivocally say, yes, it's very fun to shoot Nazis. We love it.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much, you guys.
We've actually built an entire
We love
brand
you.
around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see the vision
We want
giving
a
them
whole
Indiana
war.
Jones.
We want
Like
a whole war
Kind of
about
stoked for
it.
Indiana Jones.
Look, we won World War II, we beat the Nazis. We get to say what can and cannot be done with them, and it's always morally permissible to punch or shoot Nazis. It is always morally permissible.
Please continue,
Period.
Derek. I
yes.
apologize.
The other thing I've been playing is I wish I could tell you that it was a good thing that I was driven to try this. But
no, Derek, you're not going to talk about it, are you?
I am. I
Wait.
played a visual novel called Class of '09.
Oh,
Which-
that's fine. I thought you were gonna say you played Pal World, and I was like, what did
No.
I say,
No,
Derek?
no,
What was
no,
the
no.
one thing I
Reb,
asked?
I
This is
played a
worse.
visual novel
No,
called
this is
Class
worse.
of '09, which
Okay.
is you play maybe the meanest teenage girl to have ever existed, and go to just a terrible school, like the worst, and everything you do is awful, but everything you do it to is worse, so it's kind of okay.
Yeah.
It's Mean Girls, the game.
No,
but
it's
much
so
worse.
much worse. The photography teacher is recruiting students into white nationalism.
Oh my.
Yeah, like the gym teacher is like every bad stereotype about male gym teachers. Like everybody is doing pills. It's a very like cranked to 13 game about a bad high school, but it's also very funny in a very like dark, crossing the line 3 times kind of way. I will.
Derek has been sending me clips.
It's
of this game,
funny,
and
but it's awful.
every time I'm like, Derek, why are you sending me this?
I do
This
want
is
to be clear.
awful.
A lot of games, and this is something that I think is kind of interesting. A lot of games that have extremely edgy senses of humor do so in a like, we make fun of all sides and like we're, anti-woke and like nothing's off limits. And that's not the approach that Class of '09 takes. Like very famously, it makes fun of like an example. Your best friend can start getting recruited into the white nationalist cult at school. And one of your options is like, agree to disagree like a good fence-sitting liberal. So like the game makes it very clear that like racists and Nazis and pedophiles and all these types of people are the absolute worst. It does not try to play that like actually caring at all is the bad thing. It's not South Parking it, but it is deeply offensive and inappropriate. But it's very funny to be the meanest teenage girl who ever lived.
I mean, it's not. I've never played this, so I could just be talking out of my ass. But it sounds like it's proof that, like, there's people who are like, oh, comedians can't do edgy humor anymore.
Which is
We're not
horseshit,
allowed
right?
to say anything. It's bullshit. Like
Yeah.
you can absolutely make jokes about this shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
It's just like,
where is the
holy
humor
shit.
directed?
Yes.
Who are you punching at, and why are you doing it? And also, is it actually funny?
Yeah.
What's the
It is
joke?
objectively funny, Reb. It
Yeah.
is objectively
I will say,
funny.
if anybody looks up anything from Class of '09, again, like just go in with every content warning, every trigger warning, because there's no territory that is off limits. But like it is funny, and it does so without trying to be like hacky and anti-woke. And I appreciate that. But Wolfenstein's been the real highlight. So
There you go. So Jeff, we're gonna move over to you now. Jeff, I don't think Reb is familiar with your newfound love for a particular genre, so this will be really, really fun, I think.
I wasn't gonna talk about it much. Yeah, like I just play Flight Simulator all day, every day now. But
Jeff, respectfully, I think you were doing that when
Yeah,
I left.
this isn't new.
podcast.
okay.
Was he really?
No, but it has like progressed. I don't think Reb knows that I play
have a
online
whole
with a
set.
virtual team of air traffic controllers. But
Dude,
I think
sick
that's
as
interesting.
hell.
I
Yeah.
think that's
So
so
cool.
interesting.
That's sick as hell.
That is not
So
lame. That
fucking cool.
rules.
No, that's so cool.
but yeah, I don't have much to say this week.
I love that
Except
for
I
you.
will say through some of the connections I made through that network, there is this won't surprise many people. There's now a non-zero chance that I will fly a plane either this year or next year.
Hell yeah.
God, Jeff, that's so cool, dude.
I'm just telling you,
We'll
if
see.
we're ever flying and the pilot like dies for some reason, like you are the one I trust most to
Jeff,
land the plane.
Jeff,
Don't
there a
be
way you can,
modest
like-
about this. Like, embrace this. This
Yeah,
is so
no,
cool.
Jeff, is there a way you can show Reb your setup right now around your PC?
We can circle back to it at the end of the
Okay.
show. I can deal with that. I don't want to take up time now, but yes, I can definitely.
He's got like this whole setup, Reb.
This is like wholesome and wonderful and
Yes,
just
it's
like
amazing.
so cool. Like, I don't know. I'm almost I am a day away. Literally tomorrow I turn 33. And now that I am almost 33, I have like just this deep appreciation for people who have like, I don't want to, this sounds so bad, but like normal hobbies, like things that are just like normal and lovely
boring.
to do.
Like I'm not offended. Like it's a boring like.
But
No.
but it's nice, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, people who are into like bird watching or like
Yeah.
I'm trying really hard to like learn another language. Just like
It's
you
people
know,
who are just happy with like a thing
But
that
I
they know
think,
makes them happy.
doing a thing. Yeah.
I think like the thing, you know, I talked a lot about it before, but like I think the thing that keeps me going is like it's not like study level like what real pilots would use to train, but a lot of the third-party aircraft and stuff that are released are like almost fully functional in terms of the systems and the switches. And it's like, you know, one thing I missed when I finished school like 100 years ago now is like I just, you know, I learned a little bit on the job, but like I love learning. I love learning new things.
Yes.
And pushing myself. And it's been like very rewarding. Like, you know, it started like I wasn't seeking that. I was like, oh, I started playing during COVID and I was like, oh, I can't go anywhere. I can't even go outside really. So I'm going to fly around the world. And just gradually it's kind of like maybe it's a little bit of the ADHD or something that likes the order of like checklists for like booting up an aircraft and stuff like that. But yeah, it's just like I'm talking like you're reading like real training documents and stuff to reference. But like it takes like I have like probably 500 hours now and I've almost mastered one aircraft. But then there's like almost infinite ones and they're like all different types. There's really complicated airliners, but there's really small general aviation stuff that have like 3 buttons. Like it's but it's just, I don't know, there's something satisfying about taking the time to like not just learn the principles of like, you know, how altimeters work and how the altitude and throttle and thrust and lift and stuff like that, but also like the mechanical I don't know, it's like learning something, and even if it never like transfers into real life, it still feels satisfying to like see the tangible results when you don't like crash and destroy the plane. Like I don't know, I
want to
think
say
it's really
Jeff.
good to
No, Reb, please.
I think it's really good to like do things that you love, regardless of what. This is not saying you're bad at this, but like regardless of whether or not you're exceptionally skilled at them.
No, it's
like,
fine. I'm bad, but it's great.
Well, no, I don't think you're bad. I just like the fact that you love this so much.
Yeah.
Look at all these flashcards I have. I'm really into flashcards and this notebook full of language stuff. Like I'm super into. This is so good. John, you go.
No, I was just gonna say, Reb, like Jeff will stream this stuff, and they are some of my favorite streams of all time because.
So good.
When Jeff says there's a virtual like traffic control, I mean like real people, not like a computer program, real people who are online right now directing traffic around the world in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and it is legit the most zen, coolest fucking thing ever. And Jeff and I are actually going to do a stream on Sunday where Jeff is going to be the pilot for SDGC Airlines, and I'm going to be a passenger on his plane. And
you're gonna be like a really annoying passenger because I feel like you're gonna try to do the things you're not supposed to do, like smoke in the lavatory.
I'm gonna be like recording people on the plane, and I'm gonna be like, yo, that motherfucker back there is not real. Like
I feel like John is already a very annoying airline passenger, right?
Oh my
like
God.
without
That's not true.
acting.
That's not true. When I'm on a plane, I'm either playing my Switch or fucking snoring.
I feel like you walk on and just immediately be like,
you're talking to the guy
everybody
beside
is
you,
safe.
Like,
Let me tell everyone.
Yo man, look at this analog pocket. You see how good this screen is? Fuck, isn't this thing just the best?
John walks into a plane and he's like, this is my actual real job. Everyone is safe now. It's okay.
And then I sit down and I'm like,
I will defend all of you.
I look at the person next to me. I'm like, hey, do you know anything about Final Fantasy VI?
Oh my God. John, I don't think I
you.
ever told you this, but I went to a going away party for a friend. And I was at a I knew my friend. I didn't know anybody else. They were moving away. I didn't know anybody else at this party. It was not a party in any way, shape, or form of gamers or gaming adjacent people. There's no reason this should have happened. And three separate people at this party did the "have you played the critically acclaimed RPG Final Fantasy 14 meme at me at this party
with free
the whole
level
thing
70 and the expansion Heavensward.
It's so
they
long
know
now,
what it
I don't
is.
actually
I'm not
know
a
what the
sicko
full
enough
bit
to know
is.
what it is.
Yeah,
no,
it's okay.
No,
Final
but-
Fantasy is John's very extremely like specific hyperfixation, so he's got it all memorized.
I mean, do you want to make that? I mean, I'll talk about Final Fantasy 14.
Hey bud, I don't want to put you on the spot, but how we doing about that diagnosis, huh?
Anyway, it is time to move on in this podcast to the part where we talk about Visions of Mana, Reb. I know it's not on the docket, but Reb, it looks.
I didn't know this was on the
delightful.
agenda. This is great.
But it looks fucking delightful, doesn't it, Reb?
Oh yeah, it looks really good.
I
I've
love
I've
Mana.
only played one mana game, two mana
Which one?
games, two mana games.
Which one?
Oh, this is like really so I'm really stoked for Visions of Mana, like embarrassingly stoked for it. And Imran is like in the kitchen. He can hear me, so he's gonna learn that I actually don't know what I'm talking about when I talk about mana games.
Yeah.
I played the one where it's top down and you have a party of 3 and there's a sword guy and a magic person and then like kind of a little weirdo.
Secret of Mana.
Yeah. I played Secret of Mana. And I loved Secret of Mana. It was super cute. I love the music.
I was thinking like this could be any JRPG.
Yeah, it could be. And
There's
then
a
I
sword
played
guy and a magic person and a little weird guy.
Yeah. And then I played the remake on was it Switch? No, it was PlayStation.
Did you play the remake of Secret of Mana or the remake of Trials of Mana?
I think it was Trials of Mana that I played. And
The
I
remake
didn't-
is good.
Trials of Mana is the one with the
was
ooh girl,
okay.
right?
Yes, you never played as the Ooh girl. You never
was-
played
it was
Trials.
whichever one-
of Mana?
It was whichever one has the shopkeepers that are like. Dun, dun, dun,
I mean, those are all the shopkeepers in the Mana
Oh.
games, but you are
Okay.
talking about Trials of Mana, especially
Yeah,
the
yeah.
guys in the
That's
turbans.
correct.
They got beards, and they're like,
Yeah.
Yeah, they're doing like a dance to the music,
Yeah,
and it's
a
like
great
actually
remake.
kind of funny.
you
I
gotta
played
leave?
both of those. I like that one a little less. I mean, I don't know if it was a good remake or not. Imran says it's not, but
the Super Nintendo version is much better.
I
yeah.
didn't. I
But
liked.
most
I
people
liked
didn't
it
have that
fine.
option.
Finn, you got
but
to bounce.
So for Visions.
Yeah, I got to bounce, but I just
Oh,
wanted to say
Love you,
I
Finn.
I love
had
you,
to make
bud.
had to make a chance to get on with Reb just because I missed her. So, love you. Have a great
Tell
night,
Saki
everybody.
hi.
Later, pal.
Bye.
I will. Bye, everybody,
Bye-bye.
and Jeff. Jeff specifically.
This is
you.
ruin the wonderful streaming layout now.
No, Reb, Derek will vouch that we were streaming Winter E3 with Jeff Keighley and
Winter
and-
E3.
and I mean it's not an award
Yeah.
show, and Visions of Mana popped in, and Derek thought that I would. Derek was like, John, do you need like a towel? Like, are you okay? Like, I was yelling and screaming. Mana is one of my favorite
I
franchises.
called that it was Mana before you did. I am proud of that.
did. Derek's like, wait, is this Mana? You absolutely did, Derek. Sorry, I just wanted to bring up Visions of Mana real quick one because I'm more excited for it than I am
That's good.
Rebirth, and two,
It looked
our big topic tonight's going to be kind of a downer, I think. So I wanted to get a few more positive. It's not going to be not everything in 2023
In a different
bad,
year,
but-
maybe this would be weighted a little differently. But
Yeah.
you know, we want to. This is kind of like part one of a two-parter, like reflecting back on 2023, right? Because next year is our Game of the Year show.
Next week, not next year.
Next week, not next year.
Well, we will have a Game of the Year show
We
next year.
will. If we're all still here. But like 2023, I wanted to do a post-mortem, so to say, on 2023, like the good, the bad, the ugly for like the gaming industry and everything that surrounds it.
I should have
And-
done more prep for this show. What even happened in 2023?
God.
Did anything
Couldn't
happen
tell
in
you.
The problem is it
2023?
all feels bad, right? I can
Yeah.
name a lot that happened, but like
Mhm.
the good is that a bunch of like very fun games came out, right?
Yeah.
And
well, look, Derek. Like, I
What?
mean, 2023 was the year that a game came out that finally tied Final Fantasy VI for me as my favorite game of all time. That was Final Fantasy 16. Of course,
Wow, go figure.
Wait, really?
I
Yes,
could have told you.
Oh, this is a whole episode. I'm not even going to touch this with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah.
I have opinions about what I've seen of that game.
I love Final Fantasy 16.
God, that was rough because like
I'm gonna say
like
this out loud so Imran can hear it. John thinks that Final Fantasy 16 is on par with Final Fantasy 6.
No, he said it's up there as his favorite game, which is
John
different
just made a
in his
face,
defense.
or Imran just made a face.
Hey, look, I love what I love, and
You love what you should love what
there's
you love.
one
It's
thing
fine.
you can
love what I
rely on,
love.
and that it's that a new numbered Final Fantasy is gonna be one of John's favorite games. Like,
that is not entirely true.
when
I'm
is the last time that wasn't true?
Final Fantasy 10?
Ooh.
Final
I
Okay.
can't say shit because my top two games are 14 and 7. So.
Final Fantasy 12.
14 and 7 are fucking great, Jeff.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's
Final
a
Fantasy
good
12 was
opinion.
one of my least favorite Final Fantasies.
That's weird because 12 is one of my favorite. Anyway, we're not doing this. We're not doing this.
But
Back to Final Fantasy.
We're not
no,
doing
Final
this.
Fantasy 16. Final Fantasy 16 ties Final Fantasy 6 for me. I've already replayed it 3 times.
Like
it
last
is,
year was because I mean obviously like Final Fantasy 16 was big. It was big for a lot of us. We got to go to LA and go to the launch event, and we got to meet Ben through a lot of this, and we've gotten closer to Ben, and that's been very cool. But like, remember that period of June where we had like Street Fighter, Diablo, and Final Fantasy all hit in the same month. Less than a month after Tears of the Kingdom.
Here's
Yeah.
the Kingdom Super Mario
That was
RPG
good.
remake.
Yeah.
That was a good game.
Tears of the Kingdom had game devs posting on Twitter like questioning their life choices. You know what I mean?
I
God.
love Tears of the Kingdom, but I am ready for Zelda to go back to like
Sure, but
more
like
of a
there's
structured
no denying
experience.
that was a marvel of a game
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that nobody
yeah.
thought could have been done.
Ridiculous that anything in that game works.
I mean, hell-
oh my god.
Resident Evil 4 remake came out last year, which topped
Yeah.
the original in my opinion. The Super Mario Star Ocean 2 remake was fucking delightful. Like it was
Baldur's
a
Gate
good
3 became a video
Baldur's
game
Gate-
that every single human on like that is the closest to the Pokemon Go effect I've ever like since Pokemon Go, right? I think everyone
not.
played Baldur's Gate.
Yeah, I'm scrolling back through the articles that I wrote last year to like see what things happened, and I keep scrolling past lots of bad things.
Stadia closed
Yeah.
last year. That was last year.
You
Yeah.
remember? Y'all remember Hi-Fi Rush?
Yeah,
That was last year.
Hi-Fi
I haven't
Rush was
played it, but I've heard
great.
great things.
That's really
Oh,
nice.
John, you should. I don't know if you have any sense of rhythm, but you've.
Hey.
I don't mean that as an insult. I truly don't know, but like Hi-Fi Rush is wonderful.
I mean, like, well, I'm also like, the Pixel remasters came out last year, which I've been wanting for a long time. World of Final Fantasy. A new Theatrhythm came out. Like, it was a really good year for games, and it was a really good year for video games across genres. No matter what genre you like, be it RPGs or fighting or horror or platformers or whatnot, like because Super Mario Wonder was last year. Like, there was something for everyone, and that's good. What's bad is what happened to the people who made all those great fucking games that you loved last year. And that is something that is constantly I just saw that picture that Reb put in the Discord chat. But it is that's an oldie but goodie. But this is something that is I feel like we constantly lose sight of is that all these great games that we love from last year, all these wonderful games that everybody enjoyed, half the people who made them are gone now, out of the industry. And already in the first 3 months of 2024, we're already halfway to the numbers that were laid off last year.
Yeah.
And so while there's a lot of, and I'll kick the conversation off with this. No, the video game industry is not dying. It's not going to die. But if anybody here is familiar with the term brain drain, right? Like when you lose all your talent, when you lose all the best and the brightest in any particular industry, then the quality of everything involved in that industry, be it its creative output, its writing, its direction, that all goes down the tubes. To say nothing of the fact that I just learned that today Microsoft closed at $3 trillion.
Despite laying off like almost 2,000 people. Yeah.
Yeah.
$trillion. Now, how many people were laid off just last year?
We got
10,000 is the estimate that
yeah.
is being
10,000
floated around. Based on that is not like a firm exact number, but that is based on a website tracker that is taking all of the public announcements of layoffs and the rough estimates of their numbers and slamming them together and saying, okay, this is what we know about.
And it's worth
probably
noting,
a lot higher.
Yeah, it's worth noting that is like inherently going to be biased some towards like layoffs at Western studios and publishers. Because even most of what we've heard from like Tencent is like Tencent shuttering like Western studios. We don't know a lot about layoffs that happen in a lot of Japanese, Chinese, Korean developers and publishers, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, it's even that is like a piece of a puzzle, probably.
I've seen a lot of people talking about how, and Reb, you tell me what you think about this, but I saw a lot of people last year and even now talking about how, well, most of these layoffs are because of overhiring during COVID. And fine, whatever, right? I'm sure that's not the case for all of them, but I get it. That doesn't absolve any of those companies of any of this.
No,
and
it
go
doesn't.
ahead.
And I think that's one reason. And so I got invited on like several podcasts last year to talk about the layoffs that were happening, and that was the reason that we were talking about on most of those podcasts, because it's kind of what we thought it was. But I think as it drags on, because we say 2023, this has actually been going on since the end of 2022. So
Yeah.
this has been going on for like a year and a half now. Like, this is a really, really painful time. And we're now looking at over 5,000 layoffs just in January alone that we know of. Like, it's really dire. And the question is always, well, has this ever happened before? And I'm like, I don't know. I haven't been here for 40 years, but it feels exceptionally bad either way because it ultimately impacts human beings. I think it goes a little bit beyond just overhiring during COVID. I think what has been happening is you read the Riot letter, which was kind of, I mean, I don't mean this to praise them, but it was sort of helpfully transparent in certain ways about what's been going on.
They've at least got a good severance package. I guess I'll say that much.
It seems like it. Yeah. I mean, I don't really trust corporate explanations of those things, but
right.
Seemingly, yes, allowed. But going back to like 2018, 2019, talking about Riot's been making these really big bets. They've been spending a lot of money. They've been saying, okay, well, we want to invest in projects that we don't necessarily know if they'll do well. So like, we've got League of Legends. League of Legends is, League of Legends, freaking incredible. But we're going to invest in Riot Forge, this indie label where we're going to like support these small studios to make games that are in the League of Legends branding, but are like, smaller scale or like genres that don't necessarily like fit with League of Legends or whatever. We're going to invest in new tech. We're going to hire bunches and bunches of people. We're going to spend money on stuff. And I don't think they were the only ones. I think a bunch of companies were spending money on stuff, and that stuff can be a lot of different things. Sometimes that stuff is really cool indie projects that I'm super excited got money to exist. And sometimes that stuff is like fucking AI and blockchain.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of stuff. And everybody was really ambitious with their funding, and funding was kind of going out the wazoo. And there was a period in 2020 where everyone kind of pulled back their funding a little bit because they're like, oh, fuck, there's a pandemic. I don't know what's going on. Are we going to be okay? But then it became very quickly apparent after like a few months of 2020 that, oh shit, the thing people are doing in the pandemic is playing video games. So we got to invest more. And then they started spending even more money. And they overhired and they overinvested. And again, this is when like blockchain and NFT technology was like really blowing up in the gaming space. Well, amongst investors, not really amongst, audiences. And then AI coming on the heels of that. And so they're investing and they're investing and they're investing. And the line up to this point has been going up and to the right. And for a couple years in the pandemic, it went even higher. And everyone was super excited about that. And now it's kind of like, it's not down. Like, the gaming industry is not doing poorly. We're releasing a bunch of great games. But a really good example is I just lost it. I guess like the idea of like the extraction shooter, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a couple super mega popular extraction shooters that are making piles and piles of money. And a couple of years ago, everybody kind of looked around and went like, oh, that's the trend. That's what we got to do. And so everybody like jumped on this train and like, oh, we got to make like multiplayer online shooters. that are going to do really well. And so everyone's making one of those. And all of a sudden we're finding out, oh wait, everyone's making one. The 2 games in that genre that are going to be hits are already out there. Our game's going to fail.
Yeah.
Because it's not one of those. And we're seeing that over and over. I actually think the survival genre, I know we said we won't talk about Pal World. I actually think the survival genre is kind of next in line for that sort of thing.
Well, if it wasn't before, it is now.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry, I know I've been talking for a long time, but there's just basically companies have been spending and spending and spending. And I think there was an attitude that, okay, it's fine if we don't, it's fine if we spend a bunch of money and some of these things don't pan out, because other things are going to hit big for us and they will make up for the things that don't pan out. And that's not the worst strategy in the world, because it does mean that you get like, you know, really well crafted stuff that is not going to sell tons and tons of copies, but is going to be inventive and artistic and like critically acclaimed or whatever. But then you also get, you know, the bets that will bring in money. But everybody just overinvested. Everybody made terrible business calculations. People with money didn't really think long term, and maybe some of the stuff they invested in was worthy, but the sort of scattershot approach that the games industry has been doing of just throwing money around and forgetting that video games take not just 3, not just 4, not just 5, maybe 6, 7, 8 years to make a video game, and then it may not make you any money. Like, I don't know. People have been CEOs way too careless with money and way too careless with people's lives is kind of the moral of this story.
To me,
I think like
sorry, you go ahead, Jeff.
No, I was gonna say like Reb nailed a lot of my thoughts on it. Like I think everyone, like especially when people are angry because like this stuff is just infuriating. Like it's nice to just find like one cause, but it's like so complex and there's so many like different factors at play. And like the main one I think absolutely is like the overspending and stuff. But like games in general are like a weird entertainment, I guess, is a weird blend of technology and art or business and art, I should say. And they're always going to fight a little bit because these companies all literally exist to make money. Like as much as we want them to like treat their workers humanely and stuff like that, like Microsoft exists solely to make money at this point, solely to please the shareholders. But like, you know, that doesn't mean that within that framework, like we can't still make good games. And I think like because games also share that sector with technology and art, like the tech sector has been having a real rough time. Things like you look at the layoffs, like Microsoft last year, 10,000, not many of those were in Xbox, or like Facebook and Google, like no one's really immune. And it's not the .com crash from like 20 years ago, but like it's a little .com dip, right? And I think some might be better off than others. You know, the companies that are maybe purely in games, it's not like apples to apples. Like people keep trying to compare different companies and stuff. Like it's all a little bit different. Microsoft's in a different space than Sony because like gaming is a much smaller part of them than some of the other tech stuff. But like when they go to make financial decisions, they're going to pull like they aren't necessarily going to spare Xbox layoffs. Like they're like, we need to make this many cuts across all divisions, and it's going to be one of them. So it's so complicated. But I think like the stuff too, like that everyone is struggling right now, right? The stuff that we face, like high grocery bills, huge interest rates, high cost of living, you know, whether it's intentional or not, like Reb said, like the money crazy. Look at like some of the studios, like some of the studio office space that these companies have, like great, like happy workers are good workers. And I think it's awesome that like companies want to provide a nice, a space that feels relaxing and feels where they can be productive and stuff like that. But at the same time, like, look at the location, like look at like some of the excess and stuff. Like I remember seeing pictures of like the new Kojima studio. I'm not like trying to single them out. That's just the one that comes to mind. It's like someone has to pay for all this stuff. And like, you can't really unmake that studio. You can't undo that office, especially if you're locked into a lease for 10 years, but you can let workers go to like save. And like, these are really like Band-Aid fixes, I think. But I think these companies just hit the panic button. And the other thing, a couple people in the know, like in our Discord have been saying like a lot of these big companies, there's like a magic number and it's revenue per employee. And it doesn't really matter. Like Microsoft's not bleeding money, but like the shareholders want to see a good revenue per employee. And like, if you're not increasing the revenue high enough, you could also affect that by decreasing the employees. And it's so cold and soulless, but
it's values on a spreadsheet,
like,
right?
Like the worst possible thing about capitalism is excess, right? And what Jeff said, it reminds me of a similar situation from the mid 90s, right? Developer called Ion Storm, which was headed up by Derek knows what I'm talking about, which was headed up by Doom Quake, John Romero. It was headed up by John Romero. And Ion Storm at this point, at this point in time, like they were riding high off of the Doom hype and the Quake hype, and this Derek was back in the days of when they started developing Daikatana.
I was going to say, are you really about to use Daikatana to try to make a point here?
No, but no. The point I am going to make is their studio consisted of a 4 stories at the top of a skyscraper. These guys were all driving Ferraris to work, and they had fancy tech at the time for 1996, 1997, like hologram technology in their office, and at the same time, and what happened is none of that money was put into paying their employees and actually developing good games. Now today we're seeing a different kind of excess, right? And it's just flat out corporate greed. There is, every time we see people let go, be it in 2023, 2022, 2024, it's always followed by the words, we are trying to create the best possible games for our audience, and we're trying to do right by our people. It's the same regurgitated language every single time, just packaged up slightly differently. Look at the statement that Phil Spencer released today. Yeah. Right? Like it's garbage. It's pure garbage, right? It's like, thanks for all the good games you get. What's that?
It's corporate PR, and it's the same thing. Right. It reminds me, it was something like we're shaping ourselves to be the best version for the future. It reminds me of it's not quite as blunt, but the horrible Bungie statement where it's like, we kept the right people. It's like fucking just shut up for a day. With the I know they need to release these statements because the investors need them, but just shut the fuck up.
So I think what we're seeing is kind of a reckoning caused by a bunch of different factors that have gone unaddressed for a long time. And I'll make it really clear that the correct answer to this is not the layoffs, right? Because as every single human being, are a symptom. Well, no, because every single human being with a conscience has pointed out that why are we not seeing CEO cuts? Why are executives who make the decisions that turn out to be bad never the ones who lose their jobs over it, right? All that sort of stuff. That's true. I also think it's worth pointing out, as many others have, that the people who are getting laid off are disproportionately women, people of color, queer folks, right? Disabled folks. It is disproportionately people who do not wield social and political power within the industry. So that means it's not fair, because even if the layoffs were necessary, you're picking the people who need to be staying. And all this does is make it even harder for, women of color, for example, to stay established and find people like them within the industry who have experience and to be mentored by. And now with all the layoffs, it's not maybe, I don't know, whenever games are thriving, it's not when a studio closes in an otherwise healthy industry and it's all the other, publishers are out there putting out their job postings here, if you were affected by this, come apply. It's kind of everyone's closed for business right now. And it's, and I don't want to say impossible, it's going to be hard. You've got a lot of thousands of people all fighting for a very competitive job. Imagine trying to get your first job in game dev and you got to compete against people from Blizzard.
It is eventually going to level out. It will eventually level out. The problem is that
what Derek said, it's going to level out with a bunch of old white dudes left in the that's where it's going to level out as, and then we're back to where we were however many years ago.
10 years ago.
I'm currently working on a story about the human impact of these layoffs.
I very much look forward to that.
I've gotten over 50 responses from people just telling me these heart-wrenching stories, and a couple of the people who have emailed me have been I am currently or am on the verge of becoming homeless over this.
Yeah.
And it sure, I'm glad the industry is going to eventually pick itself up again. That's great news. I'm glad that eventually these companies will turn around and hire people again. I'm glad that eventually everything's going to be okay. But I don't know if everything is going to be okay for these individual people.
Probably
all
not.
of these people are human beings. And also, even if a year from now, the industry picks up and they hire all these exact same people back, even if everybody magically gets a wonderful job back with benefits and pay and all the wonderful, beautiful things we want them to have, this is still trauma. This is still trauma that you have to live through and that you carry with you for the rest of everything. And like, you know, I have never been laid off myself, but I have a partner who has multiple times, and like, you know, it fucking sucks. It fucking like screws shit up in your life trajectory. We're all just fucking trying to survive out here.
Well, especially when you find out on Twitter, and then you have to wait to see if you keep your job or not, because you know. These companies will announce, like, we'll find out on Twitter that, hey, we're cutting these. And then people are like, oh, now I get to sit around and wait and see if I get to keep my job. And it's like, that's gut wrenching. That's fucking terrible. Like at the very, like common decency is a thing that seems to be in shorter supply these days. But if you are going to do layoffs at the very most basic minimum, handle it internally before you announce it fucking publicly.
I read a story I read some tweets from somebody who got laid off at Blizzard, right? And who needed to like go through a bunch of hoops to find out from a colleague that like their card, like corporate card, wasn't gonna get shut down because they were like on a work trip that they'd just been sent on. And the only thing I could think of was like, this is literally the exact same shit that happened to Imran, right? Is like, hey, we sent you on a fucking work trip and then laid you off while you were in a foreign country. You know, so like it should be clear the layoffs are simply not the correct reaction to this reckoning. But like, the games industry is in a tough place. I see people cite all the time that like, look at how many, you know, billions, trillions of dollars are being made in the gaming industry, right? And like, that's not even, right? It is often a handful of truly ginormous service games that are fueling most of that growth in the industry. And
so
if you
they are laying people off.
Yes, they
like,
are.
Also,
and of course, there's a billion people trying to make competitors to those, and their games are going to flop because there's only room for so many of those to have oxygen at a time.
But like the price tag on them has gone up so much too, and the expectations of the players and like no one refuses to let down the expectations. So like Reb mentioned, like the dev cycles, like that's the other thing, right? Years ago, like when I don't know, when studios are cranking out like a trilogy in 5 years, you can have a miss or fuck up, and like 6 months, a year, you're back on your feet with halfway through the next game, and like you can recover really quickly. It's like a lot of these closures we see, like I think a lot of the Blizzard layoffs were related to the survival game that they were working on for 6 years. There was like at least 100 people there, and I think a lot of them were laid off. Is like, you put 6 or 7 years into a game and $300 million,
and it wasn't even close to done.
And it's not getting there. Like that's part of the problem. Like the layoffs aren't the solution. The problem is like just the industry, like the way games are made right now isn't sustainable. I'm glad crunch is getting like a little bit better. I'm glad that's a little bit more on mind, and like some of the culture around places is changing a little bit. But like, again, I'm worried they're looking to the wrong solutions to mitigate that, because if people aren't working 100 hours a week anymore, games are going to take longer to make. So something else has to give, and it can't be just laying people off.
Well, and there's something else that I think we don't talk about enough in the wake of so many layoffs, so many people losing their jobs, in that the people who are left behind suffer as well from something different. And it's called survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
And as somebody who has dealt with that in a different capacity, but survivor's guilt is survivor's guilt. It is a terrible thing to watch your friends and colleagues pack their stuff up and walk out the door while you sit there and continue to do your job, powerless, knowing that there's nothing you can do or say to help them that'll make them feel better, to give them comfort, but also that constant feeling of having a loaded metaphorical gun pointed at the back of your head every time you walk into the office, thinking, is today my day to lose my job? Is today my day to get fired? I don't know how anyone at any of these companies could ever feel secure in this kind of environment.
So if I may, John,
please,
because you said, I just want to point out, because you said that like you brought up your experience with survivor's guilt and said, like, I know it's not the same thing, but, and I actually want to say, I think it's more meaningful for somebody like you and the survivor's guilt that you have to deal with. Let's call it like it is, John. You had to clean the strawberry jelly remnants of a superior officer out of your fucking ear, right? You know survivor's guilt. So for someone like you to be able to speak to and say that the kind of shit that these people are dealing with is real and matters, like, is powerful and is impactful. This is not like you latching yourself onto like something more important than you. It's you lending expertise, emotional expertise to like a very, very painful feeling that a lot of people are going through. So,
Well, and like
Go
Reb
ahead.
said, like we keep saying like they're not numbers. Like the stories, it's gonna be a hard read, but I can't wait to hear some of these people's experiences and hear their thoughts. But like, I fortunately don't have a ton of experience with it personally, but the one that sticks out to me was like very early on in my career, still at the company I am now, and through some kind of oversight, I was responsible for basically sitting with a laid off employee while they kind of cleaned out their computer to make sure they weren't taking any company data or any client data or confidential stuff, just retrieving like their personal information. And like I was in there for an hour, and as you expect, they're crying, their phone rang, it was their husband or something like that. They're explaining, like they're just like the raw, like that's something that'll stick with me forever. And that was like one person, and the thought of like 2,000 people going through that, like, and like you said, like, okay, things will settle in the industry, but like these people, like, you lose your house because you can't make your payments, you might not get that back, right? Like, if kids don't lose the opportunity to go to college, like that window passes eventually. Like some of the harm is permanent and irreversible.
Well, and some of these people, Jeff, are going to suffer through PTSD. And whenever people hear the term PTSD, they think of like somebody like me, right? Like who suffered PTSD from combat. But the reality is that members of the military who have been in combat are the smallest group of people who suffer from PTSD. The biggest group of people who suffer from PTSD are women. And the second biggest group of people who suffer from PTSD are people who have lost their careers. And it is not something to be fucked around with. It is not something to be trifled with. It is something real and something horrible that is going to follow you around like you're carrying a goddamn bag of bricks over your shoulder for years, potentially the rest of your life. It's something you're never going to forget. And you know, and there are different kinds of trauma, right? There's the trauma of losing your job, and then there's the trauma of sitting there and watching something terrible to happen to somebody that you care about and knowing that you are powerless to stop it, right? And that's really, like, when I talk about survivor's guilt, that's what I mean. The idea that, well, it should have been me, or I should have been with them at the end, you know, and watching your friends, your family essentially, walk out of that front door carrying their boxes of shit, like, makes you resent yourself because they are losing their jobs and you are not. And that is something, these are all things that I wish were being talked about more in these circles. I'll get off my soapbox now, but I needed to get that off my chest because it's been bugging me for a little bit now.
I wish I had a call to action, right? Like,
Yeah,
I wish
I
I
know.
could tell people, like, this is what you can do about it. But, like, I don't have that. Like, I think it's important for everybody to internalize, right? To, like, understand the weight of this, right? So we can, you know, emotionally empathize. None of this is ever going to hit the kinds of people who are harassing and mocking people who got laid off, right? On Twitter. None of this is going to reach some shithead white boy streamer.
But who gives a shit about them? You know?
Exactly.
Like,
but like,
cares?
we can internalize and like empathize and do it. But it's not like you can, if you want to engage with gaming, like as an art form and as a hobby, it's kind of extremely difficult to try and do so like with your wallet to make changes.
And like, I want to say,
it's
like,
the industry.
like I've said before, like my kind of line is just like, I don't really like boycott stuff to affect like anything, because I know like my individual things. It's more like I want to support projects that I feel good about. I want to feel good about how they're made, the environment and what they're made, the intent behind making them. Like, I want to feel good about what I'm investing in, because that's what I'm doing. And I don't want to reward stuff that I think, but like at the end of the day, I'm like going through this. I'm like, okay, what can I do to help this? Like, okay, well, I can like try to boost up all these small indie studios by supporting all their games, but like indie studios can have like a shitty CEO at the head of those 10 people too. And like we've seen with all this stuff, the first people to go are not the people, like it's the people at the bottom, like, and your money doesn't go to them. It stays with the people at the top. So I'm wondering that same thing. I'm like, there's so many great games like last year and like already into this year, we got like I think Tekken 8 and Like a Dragon and the new Prince of Persia. Like we got 3 banger games in 1 month, but like how do people balance like enjoying this stuff knowing like what's going on behind the scenes? It's really a position no one should have to be in.
Reb, please.
I got 3 things you can do.
Yes.
I got 3. So number 1, I hear what you're saying about like not knowing on indie projects. As someone who's reported on shitty indie CEO behavior before, boy, hate that shit.
Yeah.
But you can't pull the curtain back on every single studio and every single game. There is no way of knowing it. But I do think broadly and generally, if there are small projects and small teams, the smaller the better, honestly, whose work you really love, that you have a meaningful and tangible way to support, whether that's supporting a Patreon or a Kickstarter, or I mean, Kickstarters are a little dicey, but you know, especially if they're asking for a fairly small amount and you can see the proof in the work that they're doing, or if it's just an independent creator or something like that, even vocally supporting the work that indies are doing. That can be a really powerful thing, because the impact that you're having in those cases is so much greater than, you know, where if I go on, well, if anybody goes on the internet and just says I like Final Fantasy, I love saying that, but doesn't do shit, frankly. Everybody likes Final Fantasy. So if there is a project that you're really passionate about, especially on the smaller scale, that can have a really big effect. Number 2, be vocal in your support of unions in the games industry, especially when those unions are actually formed and specific. Having vocal support in public spaces is really powerful for unions. So like ABK Workers, Raven Software, ZeniMax, those are 3. I don't know if you noticed, but CWA put out a statement. None of their unions in Activision Blizzard were hit with layoffs today. And that's because it is actually harder to lay people off if they are unionized. So being vocal in your support of them. I know it feels like a tweet doesn't matter, but my understanding from talking to people who are unionized in the games industry is that actually it kind of does. Like being able to point and say, yes, audience sentiment is on our side is really meaningful for those folks. So wherever possible, you know, be vocal in your support of them. It doesn't necessarily prevent layoffs, but it can make the fall a little bit softer when they do happen. And number 3 is like really cheesy, but I don't know, just like be a nice person. We can't really change the world like as individuals. None of us are presidents or world leaders, but we can clean up our own little corner of it. And the best we can do is like be kind to developers, be kind to, I mean, we're all kind of like vaguely involved in games. So like, you know, being kind to the developers we know, being kind to the people in games we know, not spouting off. We don't need to spout off with like shitty opinions on Twitter every time something dumb happens. Like, you know, just being a nice person and taking care of each other and I don't know, like donating to causes we care about and making sure that we're doing community support and community outreach when shitty things happen. Like, yeah, I don't know. Those are the 3. That's what I got.
Yeah. You know, I want to give a little piece of advice to anybody listening. And it's, you know, you also have to, like 2023 was a weird year for a lot of people, right? There was a lot of good that happened and there was a lot of bad that happened. And one of the things that I found myself, one trap that I found myself falling into in 2023 was feeling guilty about enjoying the games that I was playing because I knew what was happening to a lot of the people who were making these games. And I'm going to urge everybody listening to this, try not to do that to yourself, because there's nothing you could have done to save those people's jobs. And 2, the people who are making those games, I guarantee you, want you to enjoy them. Nobody makes a game thinking, man, I hope they fucking hate this shit. You know, like I hope people despise this fucking game that I'm making.
Unless you're Yoko Taro, which does seem to be
right.
I can imagine Yoko Taro sitting down at a desk and going, I hope people hate this.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. But But okay, so aside from Yoko Taro, most developers want you to enjoy because they're pouring a little bit of themselves into whatever game they're making, right? Like you make video games because you love video games. This isn't one of those industries where people get into it like accounting, right? It's like, okay, well, I don't, it's like nobody goes to work for Geico because they really love working in a fucking call center. Okay. It's like, nobody's like, oh man, all I want to do all day for 9 hours is listen to people complain about their insurance rates. That's what I want to do. People go into games because they love games.
The arts are important.
That's why they're there.
Like that's what it is. Gaming is the arts. It's one of many arts, but it is the arts. And like,
right.
It much of it may be very corporate, but like that's true of film, right? But like people get involved in the arts because they're passionate about the arts, about creativity. And like, I think it's very important. If I may maybe add slightly on to what Reb was saying,
please, is
I want more people to talk about and think about gaming as an art rather than as content, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like content is the bullshit we do, right?
I'm banning the word content. I hate it. I hate
capital
so
C content.
I hate that word.
Content.
Trademark.
John is a big proponent of using that word as often and as ironically as possible, and I hate it.
Just because I know it pisses Derek off.
Yes, but like games are not content. Like movies, TV are not content. AI cannot replicate them, right? It's art, right? Even the big, dumb corporate shit is art because so many artists worked on it to make it. And I think if we think about this industry as an arts industry and we think about the games as art and the people who make it as artists, that helps keep us in the right frame of mind to discuss this because it's not X number of people got laid off. It's artists. And art is what keeps us going in the hardest of times. Like Reb said, what was everybody doing in 2020 when we were all locked inside? We were all going to movies and books and TV and video games because art is the only thing. Animal Crossing brought the world together. It's
Animal
art.
Crossing is art.
And art makes us, like, art gives us a reason to keep going on this bitch of an earth. So yeah, like I just want people to think more in those terms. Because I just think that's important. It's important to view it as such.
And I think that just ties together with what John was saying. Like, you don't need to feel guilty about the games you're making, but the games aren't magic. They weren't created by machines in a factory, right? Like, you don't need to feel guilty about them, but just understand the human element behind them and appreciate it. And like discuss it. If there's something you really like, discuss it in that way. Like, look at it as art and not like, oh, I played this game for 200 hours and did all the, like, that's fine. Like, you play a lot of hours, you get all the collectibles, that's fine. But like, what made it special to you? Like, what did you appreciate and boost it? And especially the smaller stuff.
I think you should feel a little guilty if you're like willfully and knowingly trying not to emotionally engage with these sorts of problems, right? Like, it's one thing to just not know. Right?
Sure.
That's understandable.
I just want to play games, Derek. I just want to play games.
But like, if you know there's stuff going on, like I like, you can have problematic faves, right? Like I love plenty of games that come that had like horrible crunch or layoffs surrounding them, right? And like, I don't have to convince myself, right, that those things didn't happen or aren't real in order to enjoy the art that came forth from it. I engage on that level, right? Because I'm an emotionally complex and mature person who's capable of that. And I truly believe most people are. So we don't need to. You should feel a little guilty if you have to try and look away in order to, because if you have to look away to enjoy a piece of art, if you have to ignore all of the problems, then like that's something that you are trying to tell yourself that you are denying.
But I'll add to that and say there's art that is problematic because it was made in a problematic way, or it contains content where you're like, oh, this has a message that I think is kind of actually genuinely fucked up. But there's also art that's like bad because it's just kind of mediocre. Like it's not amazing. It's just kind of
Right
fine.
to Hell Redemption.
Like Final Fantasy 16.
I want to encourage everybody to like enjoy mediocre art though. Like really, like it's one of the big. I mean, there's like a whole long discussion to be had about why these layoffs are happening. We've talked about it a little bit. I'm sorry, the cat won't shut up.
I love the cat.
Like,
it's fine.
Like, I mean, lots of overspending, but like one of the other big issues is that basically there's like, you know, a handful of like super mondo successful games every year, and then a bunch of shit that fails. Just so much shit that totally gets tons of money spent on it, and then just eats the dust in terms of spend and consumer engagement or whatever the fuck it is shareholders care about. And I just like, I don't know. I think it's good to enjoy stuff that's fine. Most art is just fine. My friend Amelia says it all the time, and she's absolutely right. Most art is fine, and it's great to enjoy completely fine art. And I really hate that we're in this situation where there's like, you know, 10 mind-blowing amazing games every year and then stuff you never hear about. Like I would like there to be just more mediocre stuff in the middle. And I don't think we've gotten completely far away from that, but I worry in terms of what companies are willing to spend money on, we're going to hit a point where everything either needs to be a home run or it's going to get canned. I want companies to be more willing to make things that are going to end up in the hypothetical equivalent of the Walmart $10 bin one day, but we're still going to really like them.
Well, it's kind of like Reb a couple years ago when we hit that point where developers were openly telling their people, hey, if we don't churn out an 85 Metacritic game, we're not getting bonuses. Like that's a real thing that was fucking happening. And that like hits the nail on the head, right? Like just, you know, that like, can you imagine working under that kind of atmosphere?
Yeah.
Like,
please have my permission to enjoy things that get a 6 out of 10 on IGN. Yes.
I love weird, messy things.
Final Fantasy Stranger of Paradise, Derek.
It's a fantastic game. It's a fantastic pile of garbage. I love it.
Yeah.
Like I said this so much when we did the FF16 review, right? But like so much of my growth as you know, somebody involved in art in any way, right, has been my ability over the years to separate like I like it, therefore it's good, or I don't like it, therefore it's bad. Right. And like some of the most fun I've had with messy movies, with messy games, etc., has been being able to find things that are divisive, you know, or are a super mixed bag and say, here's the stuff that works and here's the stuff that doesn't. And the way this comes together is fascinating to me. Right. Like it is so much better for something to be high highs and low lows than it is for something to be like unflavored white bread, if that makes sense. But for some people, that's all they want is the unflavored white bread, and that's fine too.
That's fine. Is that my incredibly talented and illustrious colleague Tom Marks in the chat?
It could be.
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Tom's writing.
He rules.
But yeah.
So we're hitting our 10:30 mark here, and I'll kind of end with this. Yes, 2024 has you know when we take a look back, you know, at 2023, and we think about all the highs and lows of that year. 2024 is starting out much the same way that 2023 ended, with a bunch of good games and a bunch of layoffs. And I know that is disheartening, not just for the people losing their jobs, but for the people who have remained behind. And so the one thing I would ask everybody in chat and everybody listening to this on Spotify or whatever you're listening to it on is to kind of take this with you going into 2024. Enjoy all these games. It's okay. Like Derek and Reb and Jeff have said, it's okay to enjoy art. You should enjoy art. But at the same time, be mindful of where that art came from and who made it. And kind of silently, I guess, thank them, because that individual
or not silently even.
What's that?
Twitter's still good for one thing. We don't have to be silent when we thank people for their work on things we love.
Like you know, and the thing, like, you know, people, like Reb pointed it out, like people see these tweets, you know, like you know, like don't think that you're throwing something out into social media and it's just getting lost in the ether. Somebody is going to see it. And somebody is going to, and you know what? If it makes even somebody got laid off, like let's say you love X game, and the person who made that game got laid off. if they see a week later that even just one person really, really loved it and it was meaningful and impactful and it left a positive impression on them, it may not like dull the blow of losing their job, but I guarantee you it will give them a small bit of vindication.
People like good feelings.
They poured their heart and soul into something and it affected someone in a positive way. And that as somebody who like, I'm not an artist at all. I have no artistic ability whatsoever. But what I will say is I do know a lot of people who do. And the one thing they love more than money, more than awards, is to know that their art is appreciated. And
money's
valued.
nice though.
Yeah, money's pretty
nice.
good.
Money's nice.
It does help me
nice.
eat.
I'm not gonna lie about that. But that's what I got to say about that. Reb, what an absolute delight to have you back on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I missed you. We all missed you.
I'm glad we've already.
Anytime you reach out to me with like a couple weeks notice.
Yeah, I'm glad we've already scheduled a follow up. In fact.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Really?
I'll be back.
Yeah. I posted it in the our little channel. You'll see.
Okay.
But
yeah.
So speaking of games we loved in 2023, next week there, because our
Game of the Year show. It's not all the big AAA games. You know, spoiler alert: Slay the Princess got an honorable mention from me.
Oh hell yeah!
Like
but no, it's gonna be. We always have a really good time, a really good contentious time with our Game of the Year show. So yes, I agree. Reb is awesome. Reb's getting a lot of praise in chat.
Thanks, everybody.
And yeah, I mean, she is a 2-time award-winning journalist. You know, I mean, look,
I have my performance reviews coming up, and I had to like invent some goals for myself, and one of my goals is like, I don't know, I could take a third award. Let's work on it. Let's work on that.
Let's go.
See if I can get a third one.
Online for a third award. And of course, don't forget, guys, we are. It hasn't been officially approved yet, but we've got the inside track that we've got the inside scoop that it's going to get approved. So we're working on our panel, our best Final Fantasy Best Boys panel with Ben Starr and a few other cool guests.
Posting the voting survey for the Best Boys in the chat one more time.
Go vote for the Best Boys. Vote for Sabin. Sabin needs some love. Reb, we greatly appreciate you, and I know that you are super busy, so the fact that you just took an hour and a half out of your busy time to hang out with us again means the world to us.
Anytime you ask me in advance.
I'm going to ask you in advance much more often. All right, everyone, take care of each other, and remember that kindness costs nothing. We'll see you next week.